were working with a bunch of your buddies. I always say it was very similar to the show 𝐸⁻HOLICS. We all lived together. We all worked together. And it was just a really, really good time. I think, booking a meeting in 2019 was a lot easier than it is in 2026. And so if you're somebody who's going to give up at not even the first no, if you're going to give up at the 50th no or the 100th no, like this isn't the job for you. We also had little like weekly and then it turned to monthly like awards. One of them was called Animal of the Month. One of them was called Unicorn of the Month. The Animal of the Month was like someone who went above and beyond. And usually it's obviously like quota based, but if there's 2 or 3 people blowing out quota, like still it's going to be a group voted and selected champion. And then the unicorn was the person who was the most helpful. So maybe it's somebody who helps like a call script or a sequence or a template or a new workflow with some of the tools. I remember trying to help like lawyers like share their screen in 2014, and it was like a pain in the ass. Like you could spend 15 minutes sometimes just trying to get them to share their screen, and like it was nuts. And to your point, like if someone hits me up, I go to their website and it looks like it was made in 2005. I'm like, all right, I'm moving on. Like it sounds crazy, but yeah, like that stuff is so valuable. And I promise if you hit up 10 of them and say like, what's up, John? Saw you work here. Would love to learn how either you broke in or just like how it's been. Like, would you be down to chat for 15 minutes? If you send out 10 of those, you're going to get like 3 or 4 that respond. And all of them were in that same seat as you at one point. And then now when it comes to, 5 years down the line, yeah, maybe you never worked for this person because they weren't your BDR leader, but you knew this person in product or marketing because of whatever reason. Now they're at this really sweet company that you like, and they're going to vouch for you because like, yeah, I worked with John, 5 years ago. Yeah, John was a BDR, but like he always, was interested in what we were doing in product. And so we talked about stuff and I shared things with him and like, he's really bright. Like I would give this guy a shot.
Welcome back to Prospecting Pros. And on today's show, we have Matt Roberts. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, John. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so I've actually I've seen Matt. We've been connected for a while. We've never really spoken, but I've seen Matt's posts for multiple years. I think going back to when you were at Chili Piper. And when I was looking for guests that have a expertise in SDRs, I was looking at your profile and I thought you'd be a great fit to come on and talk shop. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about some of your previous jobs you've held and where you are today?
Cool. Appreciate time and the intro, John. Glad to see somebody's seeing the post as well. It's been a long run. So yeah, as far as my background goes, I always tell people I sort of fell into the tech sales dev world by accident. The reason I say that is I went to school, UC Santa Barbara. A lot of my friends were doing something called the technology management program at the time, which was a lot of people ended up going into sales, product, et cetera, into the tech space. This is around 2013. Whereas I went to LA to work on music videos and reality TV, and lasted there about a year and a half, a little under 2 years. Moved back to Santa Barbara because all my buddies were there, and was pouring wine and just getting by, bartending, and they would come in on the weekends, and I would be serving my friends, and they had their fancy SDR money at the time. And they kept saying, hey, you got to come and join us, work with us at a startup called Appfolio. There's a few different startups in Santa Barbara that were getting a little bit bigger, Procore being another one. And I just took an interview, and next thing you know, I was working there and had some of the best times of my life, early stage, SDR role. We were working with a bunch of your buddies. I always say it was very similar to the show 𝐸⁻HOLICS. We all lived together. We all worked together. And it was just a really, really good time. About a year and a half into that role, after I'd been promoted to an AE, I got pretty burnt out and was like, I don't know if this is for me, and I don't know if I want to do this forever. So I quit and I traveled. I was just telling you a second ago, my sister's out in England. I did a big Euro trip for about 4 months with a good buddy and came back, went to my hometown up in Northern California, where as far as you can get from the tech world, and was just figuring out what was next. After year and a half, 2 years of a passion project with a buddy there, I said, hey, I need some paychecks again. So decided to get back into the tech space because that's what I knew. And that's when I sort of like really kickstarted my career, which was I was looking for a remote role. I had the AE experience, but I was like, I don't know if I want to be an AE again. And so I was just like, I want to find the right company. I'll come in as an SDR and I'll, kick butt there and see where it takes me. And so I found an 18-person company that was completely remote pre-COVID called Chili Piper. and said, hey, this looks kind of interesting. Maybe I'll apply here and see what happens. And then long story short, got hired as SDR number 3 there. And within about 6 months, I was the SDR manager. I started hiring people. And about a year and a half later, I was the director of sales development, and I had managers and a team of 20 something under me. And so that's what I always say kind of really kickstarted my career. But I completely fell into it, and it wasn't by choice. It just kind of felt like it was part of the journey. And since then, from Chili Piper, I moved into the head of sales development role at Mosaic, which was an FP&A platform, for a little under 4 years. And then about a little over a year ago, we were acquired by HiBob, where I moved into a role that was very strategic, less building and growing and leading a sales team, which I quickly realized that's what I loved the most about that sales dev leadership role. And so then I got connected through a few different buddies who were building go-to-market teams at a company called Vibe Scaling, and now it's called Crew, where all we do is place talent at AI natives in San Francisco and New York City. And so I joined them about 2 months ago now. So all a long way to say, fell into the tech world, was an SDR, was an AE, moved into sales dev leadership, and now I place SDRs, BDRs, and sales dev leaders at some of the fastest growing AI natives in New York and San Francisco.
It's a cool story. I love hearing how people got into like the sales or tech world, because it's typically never a straightforward path. There's always like, what you're doing, you're traveling. For me, I was just on a podcast right before this, and I was talking about how I was a tennis coach, quit my job, moved to Argentina, needed a remote job, and you're just looking for almost anything, because this is before COVID. Chili Piper was actually one of the companies on my list that I was eyeing, because it was one of the few that were out there, and like they were remote first, and at that time that was really important. It was more important to me than the money at the time. But yeah, I love hearing those stories. What really stood out to me as I was looking over your the different jobs you've had is how many people you've hired, which really makes sense of how you got to where you are today, and now you're actually focusing on that 100%. Let's talk about that, because for me, we're constantly hiring SDRs. I don't do the hiring myself, but the team, and it's challenging. You've probably seen just about everything from the good, the bad, the in-betweens. Walk us through, what do you look for when you do hire an SDR? What do you look for actually in an interview? And then also post-interview, because people can interview well, right? And they make it past that. And then you kind of bring them on. You're like, oh, a little bit different than I was expecting. What do you look for also post-interview to make sure they're a good fit?
Yeah, good question. And funny enough, like I said, this became my superpower and also what I love the most. And so I made a post about when I joined Crew as this is my ikigai, which is I think I'm good at it. I love it. It can pay the bills, and it makes the world, quote unquote, a better place. It's not harming anything. And so this has been very, very passionate hobby, whatever you want to call it, outside of just work. And I would always place people elsewhere whenever I had the chance, because sometimes, to your point, we'd interview a bunch of people. I'd have one role open or 2 roles open, but there'd be 4 or 5 people that I'm like, this person deserves a shot. And so I then go out and help place them. But as far as what you're looking for, I think it's changed a lot. I'll say that too, with AI, with everything that's, how fast the role has advanced and how different it has become. What I was looking for at Chili Piper in 2019 is not the same as what I was hiring for at Mosaic in 2025.
Makes sense.
But some of the things I think just table stakes are, we actually had a podcast episode with Andrew Froning over at 𝐟𝐸 the other day, and he had a framework that I really liked, which I can say maybe is similar to the way I would approach it anyways. He calls it Champions Framework, which is coachable, humble, adaptive, motivated, play as a team, intelligent, open-minded, nimble, and savvy. And so just looking at that as a framework and sort of the way that I have always thought about hiring, there's some that I'll take out of there and say are the most important. And the first 2, which actually could be C and C, either way you want to put it, coachable and curious are 2 big ones that I don't think there's any SDR, BDR out there that's really good at what they do and are not coachable or curious. As you know, it's the growth mindset, right? You're looking for people earlier in their sales career. And just like you mentioned, tennis, if you're somebody who doesn't want to get better every single day, you're going to be a terrible sales rep in general, and you're never going to work as an SDR or BDR. And so like that one is a huge part. And, you got to make sure you can suss that out through role plays or just anything in the interview process. Like, is this somebody who's coming in and like thinks that they are doing something right and doesn't want feedback? Or is this somebody who's literally looking for that feedback in every single interaction they have and getting, coaching at every single turn? And then the curiosity part, curiosity, I think, again, goes into a few different angles. Curious about the space that they sell into, curious about the persona, curious about how can I be more efficient in my day, curious about what new tech is out there. And then when you're on the phone with somebody or you're in a conversation, you're curious about them. And so you're asking questions and you're doing, the qualification and the disco. So it's like coachability, curiosity, huge. And then the other ones, again, like I think the motivation, the grit, however you want to put it, like that's just, again, a table stakes. And sometimes people say they have it, but they don't really. Other times people can prove that they do by the actions that they've shared or maybe their experiences that they've had in the past. But like, it's a tough role. And again, if anything, maybe it's gotten tougher because there's so much noise out there. There's more people. I think, booking a meeting in 2019 was a lot easier than it is in 2026. And so if you're somebody who's going to give up at not even the first no, if you're going to give up at the 50th no or the 100th no, like this isn't the job for you. So you need the people who would just push through whatever it takes. And again, like I've never met an SDR that didn't work hard, is what I'd always say. There's definitely the work smarter, not harder mentality, but like to be a successful sales rep, you put in the work no matter what. And then one that I always really enjoyed, and again, it's actually in the framework, which was kind of surprising when we were covering this a few weeks ago, but like I'm a huge team player. Like I think in the startup environment, especially, you need to be very collaborative and like team focused. And the reason I say that is if I have an SDR team of 4 or 5 or 2, if one person's crushing it and the other person or the other few are not, that's a failing business. If I have a whole team that together is doing well, like if they're playing as a team, that's how you get, the next series. You raise your series B or C. The pipeline's there so the A's can close it. And the like analogy I'd always use is like, if you set records for the game or for the season, but you didn't win the championship, like that's a failed season. That's a failed game. And so I want people who look at it from the aspect of like, yeah, I want them to do well and I want them to be competitive and driven, but I want them to share everything that's working because like we need to win as a team and we need to play as a team or else like this whole thing's going to fall apart. So I never wanted to hire loan sharks. I was always looking for people who are like, they wanted to get better because they are going to help the people around them. So I know it's a lot of things, but let's just say, yeah, play as a team, coachable, curious, and then like, yeah, hungry or motivated, resilient. Kind of, again, those are the table stakes. Which again, it's hard to find it. If you could hire 10 out of 10 good SDRs, like you would be, a multimillionaire because you'd figure out some sort of thing, which I have tried to figure out. I made an assessment and I was like, let's see if I can pull something out of what makes these people great. And it's tough. Like there's just so much nuance and variabilities with humans.
Yeah, it's a tough job. And then I haven't really found like one recipe, like, oh, this person came from sports, they're going to do well. But then you got this other person who is a teacher and has no sales experience or tech experience and is crushing it. So it's like, it's a difficult role to be like, oh, this is where all the good talent comes from. It's like, no, actually you can come from all sorts of backgrounds and be successful, which is great, but also makes it difficult to hire. So yeah, you touched on a lot of things. I had a lot of questions that came up along the way, but like you touched on the teamwork part. Like that is also a lot of these SDR roles are remote. What are some things you've done in the past to create some type of team camaraderie? Like maybe at Chili Piper, I know they were remote. I'm not sure at Mosaic, but like what did you guys do, or what do you like to do to try to create some type of competitive? What am I looking for? Like fun competitiveness or teamwork, something to like root each other on while still trying to be the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, good question. And yeah, Mosaic was remote as well. I think some of the things that we've done, which like some of them truthfully too, it's hard to put yourself in the mindset of like culture building when it is remote and like the time that you spend is supposed to be like valuable from like a ROI standpoint. But I do think like building a good culture is a part of that, even if it doesn't show up on the dashboard. And so finding time where like you can hang out again as people, even if it is remote, is valuable. And what I mean by that is every time there would be a new hire, like usually like their second or third week, so that they didn't need to think about it right away, was I'd have them do like a 15-minute show and tell, which is just like, hey, give us a background on your life. Literally use whatever you want to share in that time, but we want to get to know you as a person. And then outside of that, just again, making things fun wherever you can, which might be like a happy hour that's a virtual one. It might be like a competition, which again, like maybe a little bit different than a spiff, but some sort of competition where like it's a cooking challenge, or something where like we can do things that are outside of just our day to day. It's getting to know each other. It's silly. It's fun. But again, like something that might be competitive, where like I'm going to select a winner or something like that. We also had little like weekly, and that turned to monthly, like awards. One of them was called Animal of the Month. One of them was called Unicorn of the Month. The Animal of the Month was like someone who went above and beyond, and usually it's obviously like quota based, but if there's 2 or 3 people blowing out quota, like still it's going to be a group voted and selected champion. And then the unicorn was the person who was the most helpful. So maybe it's somebody who helps like a call script or a sequence or a template or a new workflow with some of the tools. And so just anything, again, that gets the team like working together, sharing stuff about themselves and enjoying it. Because again, it's a hard job. If you're not having fun, then like it's not the job for you, and it's not the place to be. Those are just a few things, but yeah, like I think again, building the culture of everyone pushing each other, but like for the betterment of the team is like what you should strive to do.
This episode is sponsored by LevelUp Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. LevelUp Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show. It's certainly not easy. I think teams are always tinkering with what works best and who you've got on the team, what makes them tick. For us, what we try to do, so we have almost 45 SDRs, and so it gets a little more challenging. But one thing we've done is like we just create one channel in Slack, and it's like every single meeting you book goes in there, and so it's like always because you're not booking a whole lot of meetings compared to the amount of outreach you're doing. So like the more you can root each other on, and a lot of the tools now like Orem, and I'm sure a lot of the other dialers, you can actually listen to your team members, your teammates, make those dials in their conversation. So it's really actually cool to like try to pick up little tips and nuggets that they're doing that maybe is working for them, or whether even if it's subtle things like tone. I remember back in the day when I was cold calling, we used to do a Slack huddle because the tools didn't allow for this type of stuff. And so we'd Slack huddle and put ourselves on mute so we could hear each other. Really old school, but that was our way of getting to hear each other, have our conversations.
Yeah, we did the same when we were like constrained for budget on specific tools. We would still Slack huddle or Zoom. And then, yeah, I mean, to your point, like a wins channel absolutely needed. Like you need to like flag, hey, book the meeting. Hey, this closed. You want people celebrating each other. And then even like on a Monday sync, I would always have people bring like 1 or 2 wins that they had the week before, and like walk through the story of like how they booked the person, what specific messaging they use. So yeah, just another thing that I had blanked on that you mentioned that definitely helps build like the culture of sharing feedback and also sharing wins.
Yeah. So, if you could, off the top of your head, like what was kind of the most amount of SDRs you were managing at a given point?
20 something with 2 managers.
Yeah. So that's a lot. So, given that, how do you coach at scale right now? There's a lot of tools that are coming up that kind of allows, that's more helpful. There's even these AI coaching environments where you can, literally set up a AI training environment and they can go and practice the script at their own time and practice the get the objections going on without having a manager present. But like, what have you done? I don't know if you even had those tools available at that time, but how did you coach the team at scale? Because just that's a lot of people and a lot of calls to be reviewing.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have those tools, and again, like so much has changed in the last year and a half, and I have not played with a good chunk of them. And I, maybe won't ever. We'll see. But I think the big takeaway from coaching and what we have done, whether it was Chili Piper or it was Mosaic, was like make it something that is structured and like it's consistent. Every Friday we had a training session. Sometimes it was led by myself. What I liked more was when it was led by peers. I think peer led is a lot more fun and also just like memorable because again, you're sitting there talking as their leader constantly. Whenever you can get someone else to jump in and share stuff, it's better. And I also think again, they're on the ground floor, they're getting the stuff done. So it's like, have the person who's doing teach you rather than someone who's just like telling you something that used to work maybe when they did it 10 years ago. And so every Friday we'd have like a training session there. We'd record it. It would hopefully be again peer led, but sometimes it wasn't. And then again at scale, it's like once you get to a spot where you need to have a team lead or a manager or something like that, it's delegating as much as you can for them, so that again it's not all on your plate, but also you're getting people involved that have their hands a little bit dirtier and are more recently like in that environment. So from a scale perspective, delegation is huge. You can't do it all on your own. And then again, like the tools that we were using at the time were still a lot of the very similar stuff that again is probably not as relevant now a year or two later. But just having slide decks, having Orem calls, having Gong calls, whatever pulled up, screenshots of what you can find in Outreach or SalesLoft. And then sometimes it was like creating looms and stuff that were a little bit more tidy and professionally clipped together so that it was a better use of time if it was something that was like a process or a workflow related.
It's amazing how it's changed over time. Some of these tools are certainly helpful, but still, it almost just helps you know where to look in a sense. But still, like AI is not perfect. It does help to have a human review, especially when it comes to tone. That's where I think the human really helps out. Now you've interviewed and hired a bunch of SDRs. You've managed a bunch of SDRs, and I'm sure the common question you get, because not many people want to be an SDR forever, is like, what's growth look like for me in the company? I get it all the time. Like, and so how do you typically answer that? And then how do you know whether or not they're really like, does their personality fit more to be in sales, like go to AE, or actually do they have management? Do they have any skills that really actually the management would be better for them? Like, how do you assess that? And when SDRs come to you, how do you handle those conversations?
Yeah, the growth one is super valuable to me in a few different ways. And what I mean by that is if people aren't looking for their growth, I don't see it as necessarily a red flag, but it's like that they should be looking at where am I going to grow into in this role, because it just like, again, looks a little longer term, which like the SDR role should be something that they're not expecting to like blow right through. And a lot of people have this idea of like, I'm going to crush it in like 6 months. I'm an AE. And it's like maybe at some places, but like reality, no. Not saying that it needs to be 2 years, but like, the expectation should be you're going to be in the seat for 12 months, 18 months, something like that. And so I do like it when they're motivated by the growth, knowing that it's going to be a little while, but like they want to focus on something next. But yeah, I guess to backtrack, the leadership versus individual contributor pathway, like, it sometimes in the interview process, but I don't think you always understand it until it's been a little bit in seat. I've hired people that I didn't think were going to necessarily be a team lead or a manager one day in the future, but then they completely changed my mind, and that's where they ended up, and they ended up being fantastic at it. And I've also hired people where I thought like, yeah, maybe this person could be a good sales dev leader or team lead, and then when it gets to that point, that's like the last thing they want to do. And so I guess the biggest takeaway there, and my mentality of when I've had leaders in the past, was never force someone into that or like try to push someone into it if it's not like their own thought, it's not their original like motivation, because I do think, again, especially in sales development leadership, you have to love it like first and foremost, because you could be really good at it, you could know how to be a great coach, but like if you don't wake up every single day and like want to help, 8 to 12 reps get better every single day, you're going to be absolutely miserable. And I've actually had a friend. The reason I say that is I think it might have been my very first sales dev leader that I brought on was somebody that was really good at the role. I got along with really well. They were respected by people. And I said, hey, like, I think you're going to be great at this. Like, let's get you in this seat. They did it. And they were just so unhappy. Like they were such just a born, IC. And now he's been a successful AE at like multiple companies. He's great at what he does, but like there was probably, maybe 2 or 3 weeks where they were okay with it. And then after that, it was like every morning we were talking and I could just tell they hated it. And they're just like, oh my gosh, like I have, 2 kids at home. I feel like this is like, not to call your reps kids, but he's like, this is just, it's so much more emotionally draining than I thought it would be. And like, I already have 2 daughters that I'm like raising. I don't want like more people that need things from me constantly. And I was like, shit, you're right. And so since then I was like, I'm never going to like try to push somebody into leadership or like tell them that they could be great at it. It's something that they have to want more than anything. So that's kind of the way I look at leadership, for sure. And again, there's always just because you're a good IC does not make you a good leader, which again, this could be the example of that. I've seen the opposite true, where there's people who are not like the greatest IC. They weren't the top SDR, BDR, blew everything away. They're fantastic coaches and they're great at building a team and doing all that. They don't need to be the best cold caller, the best, objection handler to do all these other things. So leadership, I do think is a lot trickier. On the IC route, obviously, again, that one's a little bit more, I think, like apples to apples. If they're crushing it, they're really excited by it. Like that's the natural transition and like progression. But I do really like it when people are upfront pretty early on and saying like, I don't think I want to be an AE, but I don't know what I want to do yet. Because again, like that's sort of how I was when I got back into tech at Chili Piper. I was like, I don't think I want to be an AE, but I don't know what it is. And then I, like I said, fell into sales development leadership. But I thought I might want to go into recruiting or marketing or, something different. I just wasn't sure. And so I've seen a lot of really, really great BDRs turn into awesome CS people or AMs or even product and like marketing. Like I've probably sent them everywhere besides like engineering, because obviously that's a different skill set. But I think, yeah, the door, and again, the best part about working at a startup is you wear a ton of hats and like you don't know where you're going to end up maybe in 2 years. And so I've seen, yeah, really everything.
I can echo a lot of what you're saying. I think when it comes to someone first off, a lot of people think they want to be like their next step as an SDR is to become a manager, but they don't really realize your friend being the example of what that actually means. What are they getting themselves into? And what I've found is you can kind of see some signs in them is if they're going to be a good manager, you can see some signs that they're willing to help others first in their current role, helping them get up to speed, helping someone, the new rep. Like those are the first signs we look for is like, oh, could they be a team lead? Could they become a manager? And that doesn't, you could also just be really good at your job. And like the people that are typically what we found better just in a sales role is the ones that are just focused on themselves and doing the role and what's in front of them. And those are typically the people that are better suited for sales, going the AE route. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think if you're lucky and you're at a startup where positions actually open up, because there's a lot of startups that don't go anywhere and your job gets eliminated. Like if you're lucky enough to be at a startup where these new positions are created, you really get to test the waters. You really get to, okay, cool, CSM role opened up, or something in product or whatever it may be, marketing. Like it's cool that you can potentially jump to a different department, and not every person or company has those opportunities.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of them are very structured, and the startup world allows you to be a little bit more fluid.
Yeah. So I know you've transitioned a little bit out of managing SDRs, but what could you say, like where do you think the space is going, and how do you think the SDR role has changed, say, in the past year or two, and how will it continue to evolve?
Yeah. To your kind of point on what we were speaking on earlier, like I think the skill set's a little bit different. I don't think it's completely changed. Again, coachable, curious, all the stuff that we already mentioned, like is still very relevant, but you do need to be a little more technical. I think, with AI, I'm not saying you need to go work in AI, but it's going to probably be somewhere in your tech stack. And so you need to be a little technical in understanding it, and being able to like see where the gaps are and like where other things might be able to fit in. That can again make your role a little bit more improved. Back in the day, like I'm trying to think back at like Appfolio, I think we had clicked the dial, but we dialed manually, a good chunk of times. And I know you've had guests on kind of saying similar stuff. Like that's where we started, was like you had a call list, a lead list. We manually dialed people. 98% of our business was probably done on the phone. I remember trying to help like lawyers like share their screen in 2014, and it was like a pain in the ass. Like you could spend 15 minutes sometimes just trying to get them to share their screen, and like it was nuts. And like nothing was really done on email. LinkedIn was like, didn't even really know what it was. And so you look at like that compared to when I jumped back in at Chili Piper, where it was like we were selling a lot on LinkedIn, and it was turning into kind of the social media that it is now. Which, like you said, you saw my posts. Like we didn't have a marketing team at Chili Piper when I started, so we were the marketing. Was let's get AEs and SDRs to post, and like it can be about kind of whatever, but let's talk about Chili Piper and whatnot. And that changed the game a little bit. And then obviously like you got your Nooks and your Orums. Like now dialing is completely different. So what I would say is like to be an SDR today versus back in the day, you have to be a lot more technical. You have to understand how tools talk to each other, how to be as efficient as you can. And as far as like where it's going, like that's tough. Again, I think like channels, you need to learn like what the new channels are. It's not as easy as just blasting out emails. I think emails gotten so much harder. You still need to be good on the phones. Obviously like phones, I feel like have like popped back up. It's, things are cyclical. It's like, hey, everyone's dialing, and then it was cold calling's dead, and now dialing's back up. It used to be, hey, you got to send people like Loom videos or, some sort of vidyards. And then it was like, no one does that anymore. And then maybe it comes back. So there's going to be new channels that come about in the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever that looks like. Obviously buyers are so much more informed now and like do a lot of their own research. And that's why so much like signals and intent data became such a big thing. But, whether it's a car or it's clothing or it's software, it's like, I'm doing as much research about this thing I'm about to purchase beforehand anyways. And like, I'm really only talking to somebody at the very end. And I mean, yeah, like it's a completely different role, but being technical, understanding sort of what people care about, and still having those like traits that we talked about earlier, I think is what a good rep would look like today. And I don't know what it's going to look like, 5 years down the line. Who knows? Hopefully not all AI
5 years
bots, but we'll see.
Yeah, 5 years is far out to predict. What I will say is like with what you're saying, everyone's doing their own research in many ways, regardless of what the purchase is. So it's more important than ever you look buttoned up online, right? Digitally, you look buttoned up, and you have the reviews, you have a good website that's updated. Like you can really speak to your buyer. And if you're not, I think you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And you may have one channel. Let's use email. So let's say you get a cold email and it kind of piques your interest. What do? You go check out their LinkedIn, you go type their name into Google, you go to their website. And if those things aren't all checking out as like check, you probably aren't going to respond back to their email, even though they got your interest, right? So I think it's more important than ever that you're look buttoned up digitally across different channels.
We were just having this conversation yesterday about how like brand matters so much, and like why people get paid to be really strong brand and like marketing. And to your point, like if someone hits me up, I go to their website and it looks like it was made in 2005. I'm like, all right, I'm moving on. Like it sounds crazy, but like that stuff is so valuable. And again, it could be a car, it could be a hat, it could be a $10,000 piece of software, but like it all needs to kind of hit, to your point, in order to like even get that response now. Whereas back in the day, people might just pick up the phone or look at an email and respond, and then it's on.
Yeah. So I got one more question for you. If you could go back in your career, what are 1 or 2 things you wish you started doing sooner?
Yeah, great question. It's fun because I get to talk to people all the time who are either a new college grad or pivoting after their first career. And these are kind of the things that I always tell them, which is like start your network early. I think, your network is your net worth. It's not, what you know, it's who you know. All those things are so true. And I would say, like, I wasn't intentional or conscious of building my network. It sort of just happened just by nature of like me, I think, being a pretty social person and liking to meet people. But I would have been pretty intentional about it. And not to say like you need to, like a socialite climb the ladder or someone in, Hollywood trying to get their way into a movie role or something. But I would be intentional and understanding of like, where do I want my career to go? And I would try to meet the right people. And, there's so many people out there that are willing to help, which I don't think a lot of people understand until you put yourself out there. But whether it's a mentor, it's somebody that you just want to pick their brain. Like whenever I talk to somebody and they say, hey, I want to break into tech, I always say, okay, find a few companies that look interesting to you, reach out to those SDRs, those BDRs, those AEs, and like just hit them up on LinkedIn. And I promise if you hit up 10 of them and say like, what's up, John? Saw you work here. Would love to learn how either you broke in or just like how it's been. Like, would you be down to chat for 15 minutes? If you send out 10 of those, you're going to get like 3 or 4 that respond. And all of them were in that same seat as you at one point. They were all somebody trying to break into tech or getting their first gig. And like, there's no harm in them chatting with you for 15 minutes. And so I would be very intentional about like building that network and again, reaching out to people, get a mentor, somebody that I can like learn from their experience. And the other thing, which I did do, and it's because of one of my good friends who actually is the one that got me the interview in the first place and lives and breathes this world. He said, make yourself like as indispensable as possible when you're at a company. And again, a lot easier to do at a startup than it is at like an Oracle or a Salesforce or something. But what it meant was like, say yes to like as many projects as you can, overextend yourself and just like learn and just be like a sponge and be that person that is like, the expert in all the products that you use and understand the, kind of where the space is going and just be a total sponge and say yes to stuff and make yourself like the person that everyone kind of goes to for everything, because that again will like, obviously job security, but it also just opens up a lot of doors and shows that you're somebody who like will go above and beyond and you're kind of the person everyone goes to. And I think again that like lends its hand really well to like your future. If you just stick in your lane, it's also kind of tough to have other people vouch for you. It's like, yeah, maybe you have your team leader, your manager or whatever, but like once you get out of your swim lane and you start meeting product people on the team and marketing team and all that stuff, it's like, it just kind of creates again your spider web of your network. And then now when it comes to, 5 years down the line, yeah, maybe you never worked for this person because they weren't your BDR leader, but you knew this person in product or marketing because of whatever reason. Now they're at this really sweet company that you like, and they're going to vouch for you because like, yeah, I worked with John, 5 years ago. Yeah, John was a BDR, but like he always, was interested in what we were doing in product. And so we talked about stuff and I shared things with him and like, he's really bright. Like I would give this guy a shot. So I guess it kind of blends together, but those are 2 big ones that I would do if I was, early in my career.
Yeah. Excellent advice. I like both of those a lot. I can't speak enough to both of them. And like I would say almost the same thing about building the network because you just don't know. You get laid off, whatever, even you quit and there's an opening, somebody, you could cut the line, right? It's just that network thing is so important. And like, look, you and I don't know each other. We never met, but through just LinkedIn posts and that's kind of in network is how we just got on this podcast today. Like, and so it's super important to have. And I would 100% agree. And then the yes part of in companies and when you get asked to do things or you speak up about or you're proactive and bring up certain things and I'll take that on is super important, right? Because now I'm like, oh well, so and so's doing this project, like I want to keep him or her on board. And yeah, it's 100% agree.
Yeah, thanks to my buddy Chris for telling me that.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. If someone wants to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. Very, like I said, active there. So hit me up on LinkedIn. And yeah, always willing to chat with people, especially people looking to break into tech or AI, new grads, career pivots, or somebody who's, curious about what other opportunities are out there. Maybe they're not seeing the promotion plan or the growth at their current company and they want to go somewhere that allows all this stuff that we were talking about, wear a bunch of different hats and get your hands dirty and grow really fast. So LinkedIn works best.
Thanks for coming on, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Till
thank
next
you,
time.
John. Thanks for having me.